Okay, this is the tubular latch and 2 square roses, 2 handles, a drilled and tapped spindle and a strike plate and some washers. How it assembles: so we take the latch and we put the spindle through the spindle insert, then goes on a rose and a handle, and then there's a little screw that goes in and screws the handle onto the spindle. Just tighten that up. Then the second rose goes onto the spindle on the other side, a couple of washers, and then the handle, and again another screw that screws into the spindle and holds the handle on that side. So that's the assembly complete, and this is how it operates. So the handles go down, the lever, latch goes in, and the latch would fit into the strike plate, which would be secured onto the door frame, and that would keep the door closed. Okay, so this is how we fix it all into the door. So we take the latch and we mark out the position of the handle onto the door frame. Then using a square, transfer that line across one face, along the edge and down the other side, so it's on both sides of the door. Then we set the combination square so the front edge of the latch plate is up against the edge, and then we want halfway through to the spindle. So halfway through that little square, we transfer that line onto both sides of the door. Select the drill bit that's the same size as the spindle insert and proceed to drill through from both sides of the door. This avoids any breakout. Next, we need to select a drill bit that matches the same size as the tubular latch. So in this case, it's a 1-inch drill bit. Mark the centre of the edge of the door, and then use a bradawl to create an indent, and then drill through on this indent line. We need to make sure that the drill bit remains perpendicular and follows the line that we've drawn through. As you can see, it's passing through the 2 holes that we've drilled for the spindle, and remove all the bulk as you come out. With this particular drill bit, you have to move it up and down to retain a straight perpendicular line. Okay, next we need to measure the depth that we want to take the drill bit. That's the depth of the tubular latch, and you can either mark your drill bit with a piece of masking tape or just through observation. Make sure you go through the correct depth, and that should fit snugly and flush to the door edge. Next up, using the combination square, stick that under the front face and make a mark on the bottom. Put the latch back in, square it up again, make sure it's level, and take a mark on the top. Square that across with the combination square. Back in again. Now we need to mark either side of the latch plate. We want this central within the door. So I'm going to set a marking gauge to those 2 lines and scratch the 2 lines down between the top and bottom line that we've already put on. It's better to do it with a marking gauge because the line that's created is great for putting your chisel into and getting a nice clean edge, but you could do it with the combination square. You can see that the spindle's slightly offset, and that's it all marked out now, ready for chopping. So using a chisel, put a series of chops into the end, which will loosen up the grain and start to chisel out the recess to house the latch faceplate. Bit of pairing up using the mallet and just slowly work your way around towards the lines and the marking gauge lines. You can place your chisel into that edge and get a nice crisp clean edge. The recess should be the same depth obviously as the tubular latch faceplate, and it should sit flush, and there the spindle is in the correct position. So now I'm going to fix that into its correct position using a bradawl to mark out the 2 holes that hold the latch in place. Then a pilot drill to drill 2 pilot holes into the edge, and then proceed to put 2 screws in to hold in position. Spindle can now go in, it should fit neatly, and the latch should operate. So the first rose goes on, and using a square and getting this level, and I'm going to just fix 1 screw at first, left hand corner, bottom, and then just hold it in place and give enough friction to allow us to mark out the remaining 3 holes. So pilot drill, faceplate back on, and then proceed to put that screw in place. Then use the square to make sure it's nice and level. Tighten up a little bit more to get sufficient friction, and then drill out the remaining 3 holes. And this is going to be done on the other side as well, exactly the same. So both square roses are in position. They should be around. The spindle should be able to work freely while these are in place. Make sure there's no binding that's stopping the spindle from turning and returning to its sprung position. Okay. Now we're going to put the handles on, so they work from both sides again, and using the 2 screws to fix onto the spindle. There's a series of holes in that spindle, so you need to select the correct combination of holes in order to get a reasonable fit, but make sure it's not too tight onto the roses. We don't want any resistance there. It needs to open and close and spring back in order for it to operate as a latch. That's fine. There should be a little bit of movement. Now push the latch up against the door frame and mark the top and bottom of that latch onto the frame. And now I'm setting the combination square to the inside edge up against the flat face of the latch from the edge of the door. We're going to transfer that onto the door frame and then transfer the 2 lines that we've marked, which show the position of the latch on the door frame. And that gives us a sort of reverse C shape. And that is the mortise that we need for the latch to go in. Now if we put the strike plate over that C and centralise it, and we can mark out the 2 screw holes, and now I'm using a marking gauge to mark those 2 screw holes evenly, a bradawl to create the indent, and then a pilot hole for the screws to hold the strike plate in place. We're fixing the strike plate on first of all, and that's going to act as a template, and we're going to draw around that, mark it correctly and neatly, and that will allow us to then cut out the recess and obviously the mortise that the latch goes into. So fix the strike plate onto the frame with the 2 screws. And then using a sharp pencil, or you could use a knife, mark all the way around the strike plate. And obviously the internal mortise of the strike plate is bigger than the one that's actually required for the latch, but we cut it to the size of the strike plate, so you don't see a smaller mortise within the strike plate. It should be neat to the strike plate shape. Okay, so I'm drilling out the bulk of the mortise first of all, just using a drill to remove as much of the waste as I can. Obviously this drill fits within that mortise shape. Then a chisel to clean all the edges up and chop a small little stub mortise that's going to hold the latch. Just chop down and work to the pencil lines neatly. Use a smaller chisel to go across the end grain and clean up, so it's a nice clean mortise, and make sure it's deep enough to actually allow the latch to go in and fully open up inside there. If it's too small, then the latch will hit the bottom and keep the handles dropping. They won't return to a 90-degree position on the door. Okay, a slightly bigger chisel now to make the recess for the strike plate. I'm just chopping down, as we've done previously, a series of chopped cuts which breaks the fibres of the wood like so, and then we're going to use a paring action on the chisel to remove that waste to the depth of the strike plate, about 3 millimeters usually. You want to make sure the strike plate fits flush with the frame and is neat and crisp to the edge. It's going to get painted, this, so you don't want to make it super tight, but it wants to be nice and neat. Like so. Okay, so the strike plate goes in. You'll notice that on the back of the strike plates is a little sort of bevel, so the front edge of the strike plate is slightly beveled in. This is to allow the latch to not hit a sharp edge. It hits a sloping edge, which allows the latch to move much more easily. So we need to cut that off, cut a sort of chamfer on that leading edge, and that will allow the strike plate to fit nice and flush with the frame. Fixing the 2 screws now that hold the strike plate, and that's nice and flush. Bring the door closed. Now the latch engages inside that mortise. Now we're going to place a temporary stop. This will be replaced with normal wooden stops that are painted as I go further through the exercise. But this is a temporary stop just to allow the latch to close onto something and then engage into the strike plate. Fix that in position, a couple of nails, and that's it, closed. You can see all works, and that shuts in position, lever, the end.